My guest today is Sharon Weinstein, and I tell you, you are in for a treat. But I'm going to start with a few questions. Do you wish you could live and work smarter? Could you use great ideas to reduce your stress? And are you ready for tips to reclaim your life and reach your goals? Well, if you answered yes to any of those questions, then you are in the right place. Prior to her commitment to work-life balance, Sharon, a registered nurse by education and passion, worked 100 hours a week, 3 countries per week, until she missed a family event because of a flight delay in Eastern Europe. The plane had contraband on board, and the delay extended for 4 days. She realized that she needed to shift her paradigm and get a life. And that's exactly what she did. She's conquered the balancing act and lives and works stress-free. She rode a camel in Cairo, was a delegate to the Women's Conference in Beijing, designed the foreign patient department at the Kremlin Hospital in Moscow, and played with the penguins at Phillip Island Nature Park in Australia. They're all great, but her greatest joy comes from being a grandmother to 5 wonderful kids. Welcome, Sharon, to our show, Living Regret-Free.
Thank you so much, Gail, for that warm welcome. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, I tell you, I've met you, and I have to say, of course, with all this Moscow business, you would not be able to say, no, I've never been to Moscow. You might be able to say, well, I don't have any ties to the Kremlin, but I'm not sure.
I'm not sure that I could answer either of those. I've actually been to Moscow probably 400 or more times, and I had an apartment there for 6 years. So, yeah, that would be hard to deny.
That's right. Well, how have you been able to work life and work balance as a barometer for personal and professional well-being? How has that worked out for you?
Well, I got interested in the concept of work-life balance when I did miss that family event. What I didn't tell you was the family event was my son's engagement party. And I thought to myself, well, if there's an engagement, there will be a wedding. And if there's a wedding, God willing, there might be grandchildren. And I was not going to miss grandchildren. From what I've heard, living vicariously through my friends' grandchildren for 5 or 6 years, I decided that was something I really wanted to do and do really, really well. And that's when I created my shift. That's when I moved from working 100 hours a week, 3 countries a week, 2 weeks out of every month for 10 years, to working 30 to 50 hours a week. And now I feel as if I'm on vacation each and every day. Because, Gail, you're only as good as you are balanced. If you don't take the time for yourself, you won't be able to be the best that you can be.
Well, I agree with you. I'm a firm believer in that. How did you ever get started, however, in doing all these countries and all these 100-hour weeks? I mean, there had to be a start for you somewhere.
There was a start for me. I started because my clinical involvement was in infusion therapy, IV drug administration, and I wrote 9 textbooks on the subject, and I had the privilege of teaching that subject in 14 countries and in every state and province. I was the president of my National Professional Society, the chair of the certification board, and I had a lot of international experience. When I had the opportunity to apply, and by the way, against 6 physicians, for a position as the director of the Office of International Affairs for an 1,800 hospital U.S. alliance, I grabbed at the opportunity because I had a lot of international experience, and I was up against people as smart as they were and as capable as they were, who needed someone to get their visa, to carry their bags, to do things for them, to be their gopher. And I didn't need a gopher. I was pretty independent. I had been stranded in other countries before. I found my way back home, and I knew that I could do it. And at the time when I accepted that position, I was subcontracted to an aid contractor for the State Department. And my responsibility was supposed to be 50% for my company and 50% for this other organization to whom I was subcontracted. They both turned out to be full-time jobs. For one of them, I worked the NIS and CEE countries, the new independent states in Central and Eastern Europe. And for the other, I worked the rest of the world. So it was easy to go from Australia to New Zealand, to Moscow, to Kazakhstan, to anywhere.
That's amazing. That is just amazing. I thought I had done a lot when I spoke in 50 countries and 49 states, but you have me beat. So let me ask you. Now, I have to say, you talk about whether or not you can separate personal and professional lives. I know that I have found it a blend for me because so many of my friends are in the business and most of the events I go to are professional, even though there are personal relationships in there. So how easy is it to make a separation between the two?
Well, first of all, we talk about our professional and our personal lives as if they can be separated. The truth is, you have one life to live. The balance between work and life is a reflection of the balance within you. So I love your attitude. For years, I thought that I could create more than 24 hours a day. I'll give you a really good example. There was one point in life when my kids, who were adults at the time, said, "We're not going to talk to you anymore." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And they said, "Well, when we talk to dad, we know he's present in the moment and he's listening to us. When we talk to you, we can hear you typing 150 words a minute in the background. So even if we ask you to repeat verbatim what it is we said and you can do it, we know that you were not engaged." So I think that what each of us needs to learn from that, and I did learn from that, I no longer do that. When I'm talking to them, I am with them. I think that, so like me, I ask you to step back, look at the big picture, and use that perspective to feel good about yourself. And that's, I think, what really works. There is no question that some of your personal and professional connections are linked. Mine certainly are. Mine are even linked in terms of family. My daughter wrote a chapter in a book for me, and she's collaborating with me on a research project now. She's a clinical psychologist. She's the smartest person I know about mindset. And why not use who I know I trust? So, yes, they can be interlinked in many, many ways. I think that in today's fast-paced business world, the ability to achieve work-life balance is becoming more and more difficult. If you have an employer, they expect more from you. If you're independent and self-employed, you wind up expecting more of yourself. So maintaining work is not only important for your personal health and relationships, but it can improve the efficiency of your work performance.
Well, evidently you're still happily married. So what
Yes.
tool do you use to juggle your career and your life? I mean, was your husband in all these countries with you, or how did all of that work?
My husband likes to travel to places where his idea of camping is a Marriott Marquis.
I
So if
agree
I
with him,
said
by
I'm
the way.
staying, you agree? So if I
Yes.
said I'm staying in a hotel in Tashkent and there is no lift in the hotel and my room is on the ninth floor and there's a goat in the lobby, that would not be exciting to him. If I was staying in a place where they were serving us a piece of bread with ketchup and mold on top that looked like penicillin because it was the only food available, that would not be exciting. And I still remember the day that I did take him with me to a nursing program in St. Petersburg, Russia. And we were staying in the nursing dormitory. And he was taking a shower and said, "How long do you have to wait for the water to clear?" And I said, "Don't. That's why my hair is this color. Rust comes out of the faucet. Be happy that it's warm. And if you wait forever, you'll have cold water. So just do it." To answer your question, when I was in Scotland and in Ireland and in Italy and in Germany and in other places, of course, he would love to come with me. He even came with me a couple of times to Moscow and to St. Pete. We worked the Goodwill Games together in St. Petersburg. But I believe that my real credit, or his real credit, is the fact that he was willing to give me the space to do what I needed to do and be willing to take over and run our family and take care of our kids even when they were young. And I went off to China for a month.
Yeah, I was lucky that I had that kind of a husband as well. I mean, we're not now together because unfortunately, he passed away. But I have to tell you, he was exactly that type of guy, and that is not in our era. That's not an easy thing. I mean, I think the kids today, they this is what they do, but it wasn't that easy to find someone like that. So that's
That's
wonderful.
exactly right. And I often say, Gail, he was well worth resuscitating. Okay.
Correct, correct. So, how do you maintain a balancing act?
That too is a really good question. To maintain a balancing act, you need to have some self care. So you have to control your actions and your personal and professional life. You have to be resilient. Resiliency is the ability to pick yourself up and keep on going, and it helps us to maintain balance. So, how do you do that? You create a personal environment that sustains you. Your personal environment either sustains and lifts you up or sets you up for certain failure. Your daily life unfolds in this space that you've created through your actions, through your reactions, and perhaps even through your non actions. Be resilient enough to bounce back. Don't let minor setbacks hold you back. If I had lived my entire life the way my parents told me to, I would be learning to type and never amounting to much because that's what they told me to do. Yes, I learned to type very quickly, but if I listened to them, I'd still be in that space, never being in a space where I could actually believe in what it is I'm capable of. Stay in the present and move forward. And I think the most important thing is to know when to ask for help and where to get it.
Wow, that is a very important statement that you just said, Sharon. Be able to ask for help, know that you need help, and go get it. I mean, there are some people who have, I'm going to struggle through this. I'm not going to show any weakness. We all need help in various things. There's absolutely no question about that. And that's probably one of the best statements of all, is that when you need help, ask for it and don't be afraid to get it. So would you say that the work environment does impact your attitude? I mean, I would think that you ran into every conceivable situation you could possibly run into working with these different countries and the governments and the people. And of course, the people having various experiences of their own in the countries had to make it difficult in working with you. So what was that all about?
I'm glad you asked that question because one of the programs that I teach is really all about the work environment. For many of us, stress is a part of our lives. It affects fatigue, safety, retention, and outcomes. In healthcare, it's easy. We've all been challenged by the American Association of Critical Care Nurses and other professional organizations to develop and to sustain healthy work environments that support the professional practice of nursing and other disciplines. If the folks working in that hospital or health system are happy, they'll stay. And a growing body of evidence shows that healthy work environments yield financial benefits to organizations because they result in reductions in absenteeism, lost productivity, organizational healthcare costs, and costs associated from adverse working conditions, and maybe in healthcare outcomes. So the key to success is attitude. And science tells us that an attitude of gratitude is a good health choice, personally and professionally. I believe that gratitude is the forgotten factor in happiness research and can contribute to a healthier mind, body, and spirit. Gratitude is a nutrient for one's health, and it's a choice that one makes. So by practicing gratitude, we're celebrating what brings us joy, directs our actions, and influences our outcomes. It's really all about our attitude. Attitude matters.
Well, it's true. And I think another important trait besides attitude is forgiveness. You've got to be able to practice forgiveness, or you're never really going to be happy, because there's always going to be somebody who's going to be doing something to you. And if you can't forgive them, you're going to be in a sorry state. So I totally agree with you. Now, you also talk about something, though, Sharon, called presenteeism. Now, I'm not sure if that's being present, or it's how you present yourself. Tell us about that and how it relates to balance.
Okay, the best example that I can give of presenteeism is one that we talk about in healthcare. So let's assume for a moment that I'm working on an intensive care unit and I might have 2 patients assigned to me, and the school calls and says that my child has broken an arm. Where is my mindset at that time? Where is my focus? Is it with how soon can I turf these patients off to somebody else and get to the school where I know I belong? Or what else can I do to finish out my shift and then meet my child later and maybe somebody else can go pick them up? So presenteeism occurs when an employee goes to work and cannot fulfill the responsibility, or goes to work despite a medical illness that will prevent him or her from fully functioning. They've studied this issue in business and in social science literature. It's a serious issue because there are costs associated with absenteeism, but presenteeism is the same thing as having a warm body, walking down the hall and doing nothing. Which would you prefer? Presenteeism takes a financial toll when others have to cover for the person who is there but not present.
So what do you suggest in a situation like that? Because as I'm thinking this through as you're talking, I'm thinking, gosh, this has got to be 50% of our population. So what do you do in a situation like that?
I think, first of all, it's a responsibility that is threefold. It's the responsibility of the employee, of the employer, and perhaps the organization or institution. There have to be some guidelines that are set, but the employee has to know if that person is sick, and think of the cold and flu season we've just been through. Everybody was sick. Do you want to be sick and go there and make everybody else sick? What will that do to productivity and outcomes and more? All you're doing then is generating more revenue for the healthcare system and for healthcare providers.